Okay, so as part of this course, I will be covering or I'll be starting with SQL, and then I'll go to data warehouse concepts, and then I'll be starting informatical cloud concepts. Then I'll be taking basics of Unix, how how much Unix is required, to work as a developer or to work as a tester. Okay, and the real time documentation. So what are the different kinds of documents that we will be having in real time. Okay, so that we are going to discuss here. Okay, so these are all documents. Okay, so high level design document, the checklist, the STTMs. So in the real time, like what are the different documentations that we will be having and how are we going to use them. Okay, so even that I'm going to cover up as part of this course. And also once after SQL completes, I'll be giving interview questions where you will have to fill up all this answers. We'll have to find out the answers for them, and you'll have to cross verify, or you have to send it to me the cross verification. Okay, this is kind of an exam that I would say, but yeah, that will be very much helpful for your interviews, like whenever you wanted to switch or when you wanted to apply for job, then majority of the questions will be coming from these interview questions only. Okay, similarly I'll be giving interview questions for ICS also, because till last batch I did not provide it, but yeah, this batch I am planning to provide interview questions for ICS also, scenario based questions and theoretical questions both. Okay, and what is the process of real time and how exactly that we are going to work in real time. So there are few people who are working in real time, there are few people who are not working in real time, so everybody will not be knowing all the steps. So because of that, say for me, everybody, I think they don't have any knowledge, and I have to whatever the knowledge which I'm going to share. So that is the knowledge they will be having. So with that knowledge only, they have to sustain in real time. Okay, so they should not feel so I just learned only few concepts and I did not know other concepts like that. So I'm going to explain this real time concepts as well. Okay, so any questions? Anyone having any questions?
No, no, Bhaskar.
As of now,
Continue.
no.
Yeah, so please feel free to stop me if at all you have any questions or any doubts.
Sure, Bhaskar.
Okay, so this is about the introduction, and I will be sharing all the materials like for Oracle, for ICS, for data warehouse. Okay, and even for Unix commands, like what are the basic Unix commands that we are going to use it. So those material will be provided to everyone. Okay, so this is one material where I have Oracle and data warehouse concepts, and I have another material where I have Informatica concepts and Unix concepts. And if at all anyone having or anyone wanted to learn PLSQL, like the procedure language for SQL, I can share the material. If at all you wanted to learn by yourself, yeah, I can share the material. You can learn for that. Okay, so that is because when you go as an ETL developer, that is just kind of an option. You don't need to have this material. Sorry, you don't need to have PLSQL. So, but so it will be, if you learn it, then it will be just kind of an additional advantage for you. So if at all anyone having interest, so Bhaskar, I learned all these SQL or data warehouse informatica, everything I learned thoroughly. And like now I'm going for interviews. I wanted, people are asking for PLSQL concepts. So can you share the material? Yes, I can share the material for PLSQL. Okay. Even the PLSQL material is having with all the all the knowledge in the sense, uh, with the scenarios, okay, with the practical examples is being mentioned in the material, so that you can easily understand.
Bhaskar, I have one
Yes, please. Yeah.
So this is the Oracle. So we have to install Oracle in our local machine, right?
Yes. I will give them, like, I'll tell you how to install and how to use it. I have the software and I'll give the software.
Okay.
Okay. So if you see, right, so as part of Oracle, which are the concepts that I'm going to cover? Okay, so these are all the concepts which I'm going to cover as part of Oracle. So introduction to Oracle, what is the purpose of Oracle, what is Oracle, how do we create a schema, what are the classifications of SQL, DDL, DMLs. So then what are the operators, conditional operators, what are the functions? These are the built-in functions, row level functions, group level functions, and analytical functions. Case, decode, set operators, constraints, joins, what are the different types of joins, subqueries, correlated subqueries, and views, materialized views, match statement, indexes, query tuning approach, and important queries. Okay, so this is from starting to the moderate level of SQL. So advanced SQL is kind of PL/SQL. So since I'm not going to teach PL/SQL, I would say like from basic to moderate level of SQL. So people who are knowing all these concepts thoroughly, then they can happily do their jobs without any interventions. Because when in a real time, so majorly, I would say 90% that we'll be using all these concepts only. We don't have any other concepts where people are going to use it. Okay, because this material has been prepared with the real-time experience. Okay, because I really know I should have given my uh, uh, introduction, like about my experience other, but since everybody I know personally, so I did not give in my introduction. Okay, because I know some of them are my family members and some of them are my colleagues. So and some of my juniors also there. So that's the reason I'm did not give introduction. So, but yeah, so this is kind of this document that we have prepared with the help of real-time experts. Okay, where so by colliding like few people from different organizations, like what are the different concepts that we are going to use it in my organization, what I'm concepts. Because in real time, like we won't need all these concepts, but yeah, some companies use some concepts, some companies won't use some other concepts. But when we are going to have a class, like we should have a generic document where any company should use these concepts, at least some of these concepts. Okay, so when you thoroughly understand these concepts, you should not feel like I know only few, I did not know the others. Don't need to feel like that. You can feel like you know all the concepts. Okay, because SQL is the very much fundamental to go as an ETL developer. If you thoroughly understand SQL, then it will be easy for you guys to understand IACS, Informatica Cloud. If you are not able to understand SQL, then it will be little difficult for you to understand IACS. I'm definitely telling. Okay, once after this SQL, then I will be explaining about data warehouse concepts. Okay, what is data warehouse? What is OLTP stars? What are the different type of schemas? Star, Snowflake, Galaxy, fact table. What is a fact table? What is a dimension table? What are the different types of dimensions? Dimension model. Okay, all this will be having. I'll be explaining about the even basics of data modeling also. I will be explaining. Okay, so because when you work in a real-time world where we'll be having a data model, at least we should be able to understand when they say that what this is a logical model or this is a physical model, this is a conceptual model, we should know what exactly it contains, right? So I'm going to explain about the basics of model because this is basically is required for an architect. But when we work as a developer, we should know or we should be able to understand. We should be able to at least remember the words, like what exactly they say that it's a conceptual model, what kind of information will be there. Okay. The moment when we say fact table, what is a fact table? The moment we say dimension table, what is a dimension table? And ISA's contents, I'll explain later. Like when I'm going to start with ISA's concepts, then I'll be explaining what are the different concepts that I'm going to explain in ISA's. How much effort that I'm going to put and double the effort that you will have to put. Then you'll be able to easily understand. Okay.
Okay, Bhaskar.
Sure, Bhaskar.
Okay, sir.
So this SQL. So first of all, I just wanted to understand. So what is SQL? Okay. So what's the purpose of SQL? If anybody can remember, or if anyone can give some kind of light there. So why the concept of Oracle came up? Did anybody know? Not a problem. See, I'll tell from very basic. See, in the olden days, somewhere in 1960s or 1970s. Okay, right. If you see, even if you see 1970s or 1980s movies and all, like you'll be seeing a company will be there. Company will be having an accountant who is going to maintain all the account details in the in a accounting book, right? Like all the accounts will be maintained in a book, and that book will be stored in some place. Okay, so that was a situation where people started, like they'll be capturing all the information in the books. Okay, so day by day these companies are growing. Okay, so they had to write the information, a lot of information in the books, and they'll have to keep all the books in a place. Okay, so that's where after a few years, what is going to happen? The books, right? The number of books are getting increased, and if at all some fire accident or if something has happened, then we are going to lose the entire books. We cannot have them. Okay, so that's where the concept of computer came up. Okay, so what's the purpose of computer? Computer is to store the data, right? Computer is to do the activities whatever we wanted to, right? So what kind of activities? See, basically, the first basic concept of the computer is to store the information. Okay, so when the computer launched with Microsoft, and they came up with the concept of Notepad. So when the concept of Notepad came up, then people started using computers to store their knowledge or to store their information in a Notepad, so that it will be little easy to store the data, and if at all anything happened to the computer, the data will be stored in a hard disk, and we can keep that hard disk in some other place, to connect the same hard disk to the another computer, where we can access the data from another computer also, right? But when the Notepad also that we know, right? But in the initial days, like when the Notepad came up, then it was kind of very much happy for the people where yeah, there is something new came up and we can store easily. So gradually, right, the same Microsoft Corporation, they have launched this Microsoft Excel with more features. Okay, Notepad will not be having any features. It is kind of a plain application where we will just write the information. Okay, but when we compare Notepad with Excel, where you will be having very good options in Excel. Okay, where we can filter the data, where we can group the data, where we can pivot the data, where we can search easily, right? So where we can get the data in ascending order, descending order. Okay, so there are many options came up in Excel. So when Microsoft launched Excel, then people were very much happy where to store the data. But Excel is also having kind of a limitations where they can store only certain number of records in each sheet. There is no there is a limit for it. So when there is a limit, day by day the organization is growing and the number of records are getting keep increasing, then we have to have multiple sheets in a same document, and the document size is also having a limitation that only this document can have 100 MB or 200 MB or 300 MB, like that. There is a limitation. So when that kind of a limitations again, even though it is good, but the limitations are still there. So that's where Oracle Corporation, they come up with a concept of database. Oracle Corporation, these are the people first who came up with the concept of database. Okay, so database is going to be used to store the data. Okay, so to store the data where we are going to use it tables, and data IDs will be in the form of rows and columns. It is, if you actually see, it is kind of an Excel only, right? In Excel also will be having rows and columns only, right? But the database is going to run under a memory, right? So when it is running under a memory, like we can keep increasing the memory of a database, then we can keep increasing millions and trillions of data there in the database. Okay, the only thing is we will have to increase the memory. Apart from that, we don't need to do anything. It's not like in Excel where we have to create multiple Excels, multiple sheets, where will be the data will be there in multiple sheets, and it will be little difficult to identify the entire data. Okay, let's say there is an employee who joined somewhere in 2000. Now I wanted to find out the information. If at all we wanted to use an Excel, like it will be there in which sheet? Sheet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 100 sheets. In which sheet this employee information is there? It will be a little tricky. But when it comes to a database, you can simply write an SQL query, select star from table where employee ID is this, immediately will get all the data of all the details about the employee. Okay, that means we are going to store all the data in a single place. Okay, so that is the history behind for what reason Oracle built up this concept of database. Okay, so this database again, right? So there will be having administrators, will be having a developers. So we as a developer who are going to work, we need these concepts. But we do also know if at all I'm sorry, if at all anybody came from computers background in their education, they will be having a subject called RDBMS. Okay, relational database management system. They'll be having concept of DBMS. They'll be having a subject. Okay, what is the algorithms have been built inside the database? What is the architectures of database and how exactly the database are going to work? So this information they'll be knowing it. Okay, but since it is kind of in completely administrator role in a real time, we don't need to much worry about the database management system, like how exactly those queries are going to work in the back end. We don't need to worry. Okay, all we wanted to know is like what is the tool that we are going to use it, and how are we going to write the queries, and for our requirement, what kind of queries that we will have to write. So this is what we wanted to know. This is what we have to know. Now, this Oracle is being divided into two parts, SQL and PL/SQL. So SQL is what that I'm going to teach as part of the course, and PL/SQL is procedure language for SQL. Is what which I'm going to give a material which you will have to practice by your own. Okay, this PL/SQL is having around 5 concepts like functions, triggers, packages. Okay, store procedures. So there are 4, 5 concepts are there in PL/SQL. Okay, so this is again right. So it is kind of a vast subject, even though there are only 4, 5 concepts. But it will be a little difficult for us. But this is difficult for me to explain all those concepts, like with real-time examples. Okay, because this is not needed for an ETL developer. It is not a mandatory concept. If it is a mandatory concept, then I would be explaining even this too, since it is not a mandatory concept. Okay, and majority of the companies are not going to ask about it. Like 90% of the companies won't ask. Only there are 10% of the companies may ask about the PL/SQL, and this is an optional. Okay, but if you learn it, it will be an advantage, added advantage to your curriculum or your resume. Okay. So in a real-time world, like people we used to say that SQL. Like, do you write a SQL for this? Do you write a SQL for that? What is the SQL that you're using? What's the meaning of SQL? What's the abbreviation of SQL? Structure English, query language. SQL is nothing but a query. So whatever the query that we are going to write in a real-time world, we will say it is a SQL. So what is the query for that? Is a traditional world. What is the SQL for that? Is a professional world. Okay, so these are some things where people who are going to join with an experience, right? Which they did not have any knowledge, and they're joining with some kind of an experience. So these are some things where people will be able to identify by the words which we are telling. Are we telling an SQL? Are we telling an SQL? SQL is more professional work. Okay, the terminology is going to be little helpful when we go for real time. Okay, now as I mentioned, the database. Okay, database is nothing but it's a collection of schemas and users. So every database where we'll be having a schema created. Schema is nothing but a user created. Okay, and that's to connect to that schema again, where the individual user access that we will have to get it. So when we go to real time, so we will be knowing, we will be having the schemas and users. Okay, so first all the objects will be under a schema, and to connect to the schema where we'll be having multiple users created. For every user there will be a schema again. Okay, for every user there will be a schema created, default schema created. But like to access this schema, we need to have user access. Okay, so when you get into real time, like first you should think is like what is the database that we're going to use it, and what is the do we have access to that database? Do we have access to that database? If at all we wanted to get an access, what kind of like do we have any generic account or service account? If at all we have any service account to connect to the database, we need to get the credentials. If not, if at all people say that like there will be a separate user created for you, then how do we raise a request to get the database access? This is what that you have to ask your team members. Okay, schemas or is there nothing but it's collection of objects, right? Tables, views, etc., etc. So whatever that we are going to learn entire the course, and we are going to use it in real time. So that will be under a schema. So nothing will be there under the database. So database will be having a schema. Under the schema only where we will be having all the objects. Okay, and in a table, data will be stored in the form of rows and columns. Okay, so I will show how do we create, because in real time there will be a DBS who are going to create the users. Okay, but when we are practicing, at least we should know like how do we create a user and how do we give the privileges to the user and how actually user is going to play a role when we are going to connect to the database, right? So I'm sorry. So this I'm going to show you how do we create a user in practical. So how user is going to play a role. Okay. So for this, right, we need to have an environment, the database environment that everybody should have, and the database should be installed in your laptops, all your personal laptops. Okay. Now I'll share the I'll share the softwares to your Gmails to everyone. Okay, you can download and you can call me. Then I'll help you to install the database. Okay, once the database, imagine you have the database in your system, and once you have the database, and how do you connect to the database? Okay, the first thing is, so in real time we will not be having this command line, but when you are practicing here, you'll be having this command line. Okay, so this run SQL command line is what that you will have to type. So in the search bar, run SQL command line, you'll be having this command window. So when you have the command window, the default username is like whenever I am going to install, I will be giving the default password as admin. And when you are installing, you also keep the password as admin. So by default, there will be an admin account created. So that admin account is called as system or sys. Connect system. This is the username / admin, admin is the password, put a semicolon. For every SQL, when you wanted to execute, you need to keep a semicolon. Press enter. So then it will be connected to the system user. So first thing is, when we wanted to, for the first time when we install, there will not be any users, there will not be any schemas. Like there will be some default schemas that we won't use them. Okay. So first what we should do is, first we should connect to a system user. Okay, this is the admin user. Okay, so then we will have to create our own schemas, because when you go to IACS, okay, so you might need to practice to read the data from one schema and load the data into another schema. Okay, so that time you need to have multiple users or multiple schemas, like to have the tables, so that when you are practicing, it will be kind of a real-time practice. Now what I'm going to do, I'll be creating a user. Create user. See, the syntax is common even here or even in real time. For every concept, the syntaxes are exactly same. Okay, there is no change in the syntaxes. But only thing is the table names or the user names, these we are going to get change. But the underlying syntax is exactly same, either like here or in real time. So that is the reason you have to thoroughly learn this all the syntaxes. Create user, username. Username I am just giving SLK18. And this is optional. That is this username. This you can give any name. There is no hard rule that whatever I am giving that you will have to create. Okay, create username identified by password. So password also I am just giving as SLK18 only. Okay, so there is no hard rule that password also should be as username. We can give any user. We can give any username. We can give any password. Okay, just for my understanding purpose, I am creating with SLK18. Put a semicolon, enter. Okay, the spelling mistake. Identified by spelling mistake. Okay, identified by password. Now the user is created. So when the user is created, it will not the user will not get a privileges. Proper privileges the user will not be having, because just one blind user will be created in the database. As soon as the user is created, then we should give a privileges to the user. Okay, so here grant DBA to CK18. That means what I'm doing here is I'm giving DBA, means database administrator privileges. That means whatever the privileges that system user is having, all the privileges will be coming to this SLK18 also. Because in real time, people, the DBAs are going to do these activities based on the request that we are going to raise it, and what kind of privileges that we wanted. Create, update, insert, delete, alter, like what based on the based on our role in the project. So the privilege will be created for the user. So, but here when you are practicing it, I'm just giving privileges for, I'm just giving entire privileges. But when you are practicing it, you can try with select, update, delete, insert, that kind of privileges. But in the initial days, don't try that. End of the course, you can try that. Okay, now I have granted the privileges, right? Now I've created a user and I've given the privileges. Okay.
Bhaskar, I have one question.
Yes, please.
Yeah, Bhaskar, so you just provided the get DBA to particular user. So it means this DBA is predefined in this data, right?
Yeah, DBA means database administrator. Actually,
Yeah.
DBA is a keyword. So
Mhm.
that keyword, like the meaning that keyword is, so the grant will understand. So I wanted to transfer all the privileges which a database administrator will be having. Database administrator user. What is a database administrator user? Is system. So whatever the privileges that system user will be having, all the privileges will be transferred to the SLK18 also.
Yeah, that I understood. But my question is, something DBA is here. So how many means DBA type are there in the Oracle? Suppose some user or some, this is the DBA database. Administrator. So only this DBA is available or other user
Yeah, no,
level or
only DBA is available.
Oh, okay.
Apart from DBA, where we will have to explicitly mention select, insert, update, delete,
Hmm.
create, alter, like that. We will have to explicitly mention, like grant select to SLK18. That means it will be having only select privileges. Grant select and insert to SLK18, so that it will get only select and insert privileges. Like with that user, we cannot create any tables and all. Okay, explicit, because
Okay.
in real time, right? So when we go to UATR production users, if at all created, we won't be having any DML operations, right? Insert updates and all we cannot do. So we'll be getting only select privilege. Or if at all we connect to any source systems where people are not going to give DML operations, right? We'll be getting only select privilege, where we can just select only the tables data. Apart from that, we cannot do anything. So that according to the request that we are going to raise, so according to the role that we are going to mention, so accordingly the DBA will be creating, uh, giving the privilege to the user. Like if at all there is a user created called Jayanta, and for Jayanta, like what kind of privileges that user should have. Like we just need all the privileges, full privileges, or like he should have only select privilege. So accordingly, the DBAs are going to take a decision, or as per the request that we are going to raise it. With respect to the keyboard, we will be having only DBA. Apart from DBA, we'll be having we have to explicitly mention the keywords.
Yeah, but
Okay. Now, once the grant is succeeded to the user, now we can show the user here. Like for which user we can, because we are in a command prompt, right? Like if at all these we are going to use SQL developer or Toad, so where we'll be knowing for which user we connected. But here in a command prompt, like we will not be able to see the users to which user we connected. So for that we can use this keyword called show user. It is going to give us the user is system, the current user is system. Now we can connect, enter. If we press enter, class for username, give the username as SLK18, which I just created, and give the password SLK18. We'll not be able to see it. We have to properly type it, press enter. It will be connected. Or you can use net SLK18 slash SLK18. Connect username slash password. Even like this also we can give. This is one way of connecting to an user. This is another way of connecting to a user. Both are same. Connected. Now I can do a show in user. So now it is connected to SLK18. See, earlier it was connected to a system, but after I use this connect, then it is connected to SQL. Okay, so this is how we are going to use it in the command prompt. Okay, but when we go to real time, where we will not be having this command prompt, we don't need to use this command prompt. What we are going to do is we are going to use SQL developer. Okay, because usually what I was doing, because the first initial few days I will be explaining the concepts in the command prompt, so that you'll be habituated to write the queries. If at all you do any mistakes, again you'll have to type entire query, so that you'll learn the concepts more. Like you'll be able to remember the concepts more. So then in middle of the course, like I was explaining about SQL developer. Okay, but from last few batches, where I am from day one itself, I'm explaining all the concepts in SQL developer itself. Okay, so how do you want it to go? Like you guys can use this SQL, this command line for a few days, and then we'll go for SQL developer, or from day one, like we'll go for SQL developer. Because SQL developer, like where it'll be easy for you guys to if at all there is any syntaxes, it will be easy to edit the syntaxes and execute. But here you'll have to type entire query so that you can remember the syntax thoroughly. Fine. At least first 1-2 classes. First one class, I'll just go with the command line. Let you guys practice in command line once. Then I'll go for SQL. Okay. So now what I am doing, I have created a user. I have given permissions to the user, and I have connected to the user. Now, as I mentioned, the data in the database, it is going to have the data in the form of tables, and tables will be having the data in the form of rows and columns. Right? Now, how do we create a table? So first thing is, how do we create a table? So before that, I wanted to show what is the classification of SQL. What are the classification of SQL? Now this SQL is divided into 5 types. Okay, DDLs, DMLs, DDL, DML, DRL, TCL, and DCL. Okay, this is one of the very much important interview question. Okay, what are the different types of SQL? Or different what is the classification of SQL? Then we should say DDL, meaning data definition language. What are the commands which are under DDL? Like which all commands that we say it is a DDL command? They are create, alter, drop, truncate, and rename. So these are the 5 commands that we will call it as DDL commands. And what are the DML commands? Like we have insert, update, and delete are the DML commands. Okay, we should remember all these classifications. Okay, how exactly each command is being classified. Okay, for what purpose it is classified is I'm going to explain later. See, for now you should understand what are the DDL commands or this create, alter, drop, truncate, and rename. What are the DML commands? Okay, insert, update, and delete are the DML commands. DRL is retrieval. Okay, data retrieval is select, because we wanted to fetch the data from the database. Is that we are going to use select. TCS is transaction control language. Okay. For every transaction, for every command that we are going to execute. Okay, so there are certain controls that we will have to do. For example, when we are going to use especially DML commands like insert, update, and delete, we need to control this. For that, we'll be having commit and rollbacks. Okay, and data control language. DCL is data control language, that is grant and revoke. So grant and revoke is to grant is to give the permissions, and revoke is to take out the permissions. Okay, now I'm going to explain about each and every command, whatever we are mentioned here, and how do we and I can show you in practical how each command that we are going to use it. Okay, so as a step 1, which I'm going to explain, how do we create a table? What is the syntax to create a table? So here we'll be creating the table for 3-4 columns or 4-5 columns, but in real time we'll be having 10, 15, 20, 100, 50 number a number of columns. Okay, but the syntax is exactly same. Okay, and before that, I wanted to also explain about the data types. So in every column, for every column, we have to define what kind of we have to define the data type. So what are the different data types that we have in Oracle SQL? Oracle is having only varchar2 number and date. But when you go to the different databases where we'll be having int, big int, double, okay, in string, text, there are many other data types. But when it comes to SQL, Oracle SQL, where we'll be having only 3 data types: varchar2, number, and date data types. So for every column that we are going to create, we have to define a data type for that column. Okay, data type for that column. So now, according to the data, what we are going to insert into the column, we have to define the data type. Let's say varchar2 is the data type where we are going to use it to store the alphanumeric values. Okay, so when we are going to define varchar2 as a data type for any column, then we can store any value into that column. Okay, because for every value that we are going to store under varchar2, it will consider it as a string value, be it alphabet, be it numeric, be it special character, whatever it is. whatever it is. So then it is going to understand, or it is going to consider it as a string value. Okay. So maximum how many characters that we are going to store in a varchar2 size? 4000. Okay. And we have to mention the size. Varchar2 of size. How many? What is the maximum number of characters that we wanted to store? 10 characters, 20 characters, 50 characters, and characters that we will have to define the length, or we will have to define the size. We can store only those many number of characters in the field, but maximum we can store up to 4000 characters. If at all we want to store more than that, we will be using text data type. Okay, text. But in the number data type, whenever we are going to define any number data type, where it is going to store only the numeric value. Okay, whenever we define any numeric number data type, so for that particular column where we will be storing only the number values. And when we are going to define date data type, we can store only the date values. Okay, we can store the date values only with the specified date range. Okay, date range in the specified date formats. Like, we have to give the data in a proper format. Okay, we have to give the date values in a proper format, because if we are not going to give in the date value in a proper format, it's not going to accept it. Okay, so we should be very much careful about the date data type. Okay, when you are working with the date data type, we should be very much careful while giving the proper format. If you don't give proper format, it is not going to accept it. And even the number, where we'll be having precision and scale, that we will have to mention. So precision is nothing but before the dot, how many number of values that we wanted to store. So which is having, by default, it can take up to 38. And the scale is nothing but after the decimal point, how many number of values that we wanted to store. Okay, so these are the three different data types where we have it in the Oracle SQL: varchar2, number, and date data types. Okay, for every column, when we are creating in a table, we have to specify what kind of values are going to be stored and what kind of values are going to be stored and what is the data type that we will have to define. Okay, now we know, right, what's the table? Table is a basic element in a database or object which is going to be used to store the data in the form of rows and columns. Okay, now how do we create a table? Like, we will be having, like, if you see in the material, where we'll be having syntaxes, like, but this is the syntax of a table to create a table, and this is an example to create a table. Syntax is like, you have to mention what is the column name and what data type we are going to define. So column to data type, like that we can create n number of columns. There is no limit to create only this many number of columns can create in a table. There is no limit like that. We can create n number of columns in a data type, sorry, in a table. But for every column, we have to define the corresponding data type. Okay, any question here till here? Anyone having any question here?
No. I'm clear,
No,
Bhaskar.
yeah.
Okay, so now I'll show you how do we create a table. Okay, so to create a table, we are going to use the create command. Create table, the table name, as I'm keeping employee, bracket open. So this is the same, this is a common syntax. Okay, so the table name in real time, if you go right, the table name will change and column name and data types will change, but the syntax remains same. Okay, this is how only we have to create the table. Create table name, bracket open, and we have to give the column names. Let's say I have employee ID. So employee ID usually it will be a number, data type. So there, for number, it is an optional to give the precision and skill. If you are going to define length number of 10, then it is going to accept 10 numbers. Okay, if not, it is going to take 30, 38, the default value it is going to take. Okay, so number, I would say 5, employee name, worker 2 of, say, I'm going to keep 10.
Yeah, for worker also the same thing, Bhaskar. Like if you are not giving 10, it will take 4,000, right?
No, for worker we have to give the size.
Okay.
Okay, worker we have to give the size, because in Oracle we have to give, but in Postgres we don't need to give, or for Snowflake we might need to give. So it depends upon the different databases. Okay, databases, for some places where we have to give the specify the length, some places where we don't need to specify the length. But for when you are going to work in an Oracle database, for Oracle data type we'll have to mention that,
Specify the worker, right? Okay.
specify the size for the worker too. So employee location, here worker 2 of 10 I'm going to keep. Okay, and bracket close, put a semicolon, then enter. Worker spelling mistake is there. See missing right parenthesis. So it is telling, but it is not actually the issue with the right parenthesis. It is the issue with the spelling. Okay, now I have created a table. So when I've created a table, whether this table is created or not, how do we see that? Yes, select star from the table. Star is nothing but it is going to consider all the columns from the table. If at all we wanted to fetch only specific columns, in the select we have to give the specific column names. Or if at all we wanted to get all the columns from the table, we are going to use star. No rows selected. Okay, if table is there and if table is having data, it is going to display the data. If table does not exist, it is going to throw error as tabular view does not exist. Okay, so select star from employee. So it is giving the data because this table is created. So no row selected. Now what I'm going to do, let me insert a record. Insert into employee. Employee is my table name. Values. So values I have to give first column is employee ID. So here also I have to give employee ID as one. And employee name is a varchar value. Okay, whenever we define any value to a varchar data type field, we have to put the values in a single quote. Okay, employee name is I'm giving is Bhaskar. We have to put the string values in a single quote. And employee location also Bangalore in single quote. Bracket close, put a semicolon, enter. Now one row is created. Okay, select star from employee. See now it is giving the data. Employee ID is 1, employee name is Bhaskar, employee location is 19. Now insert is a DML command. Right? If you see, insert is a DML command. So whenever we perform any DML operation, so the database will be having two types of storages. Okay, temporary memory and a permanent memory. Okay, so whenever we perform any DML operation, so first it is going to store the data in a temporary memory. Now that transaction has to be permanently stored in the database. Then we will have to use commit. Then we will have to use commit, because if you don't use commit, as soon as we close this SQL, okay, then the data will not be stored permanently in the database. For every DML operation, either we should use commit or rollback. If we give commit, the data will be stored permanently in the database. If you don't use commit or if you use rollback, the changes will be get reverted to until the previous commit. to the original state.
So, Bhaskar, I have one question.
Mhm.
Suppose I have created one, two table and some data I have inserted, and without commit, I just exit from the. So next day when I entered, so in that
Mhm.
case I will find that the table and data is available. So what is the difference for commit and non-commit? Permanent is I understood that it is a permanent and temporary. So
See, create is a DDL command,
mhm,
so that we don't need to, because create, see, the commit is of two types: implicit commit and explicit commit. Okay, for all DDLs, it will be having an implicit commit. So by default, as soon as we use a DDL, so by default in the backend, it will commit will be passed, so that will permanently store. When it comes to DML, okay, which is having an explicit commit, that means the user should give one more round of confirmation. So if at all when we create a table, when we insert a record, so we have to tell to the database that yes, this record I have inserted, and I wanted to have this record in the table. Okay, because in real time, if you see, right, let's say the table will be having, like, we were supposed to do some transaction, some DML operation, some insert in dev database. We accidentally connected to a UAT database and we inserted it. Ideally, we should not insert the data in a UAT database. Then what we should do? If it is a permanent, let's say we inserted like hundreds of records. Okay, we have taken all the SQLs and we executed all the SQL at once. Then what's going to happen? And like, we to take out all the data, to delete all the data, it will be very difficult for us. So that is the reason. That is one more reason where for insert we have to give an explicit commit. If at all we wanted to have this record permanently in the database or not. If we don't need, then we can just go a revert. We can
okay,
just go with the rollback. There are certain databases. Let's say if you take Snowflake or if you take Postgres, for them we don't need any commits, because even for DML operations also they will be having permanent they'll be having implicit commits only. So that is going to vary database to database. But for Oracle database, since I'm teaching Oracle, for Oracle database this is mandatory. The passing commit explicitly is mandatory. Okay.
okay.
So now I'm passing a commit. Okay. Now let's say I'm going to insert one more record. Say apply to Somo Bangalore. Enter. One more row is created. When I put select star from table, I have two records. So this time I don't want this record to be there in the database. Okay, I created it, but I don't want to be this. Then what I should do? I can do a rollback. Now when I put select star from table, I have only one record. Because whenever we perform any DML operation, first the record will be stored in a temporary memory. When we pass a commit, it will be permanently stored. When we pass a rollback, it will undo the DML operations. Whatever the DML operation that we perform, it will undo. It will revert the changes. This is the difference between commit and a rollback. Got it? Any questions here?
No.
Fine. Yeah, I think that this is enough for today, because in the first class itself, I don't want to take many things.
Okay.
Okay. And I think I already have your mail IDs, right? Okay. So I'll be sharing the softwares and this material with you.
Okay.
Bhaskar, do we want to install any that SQL commands now? Like
Yes,
developer is fine.
SQL
Apart
software.
from that, yeah, developer is fine. Apart from that, you have told na in local machine you can go and run this query.
Yes,
SQL
you have to
star.
install Oracle software. You have to install Oracle software in your laptop.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that Oracle software I'll give you. Okay. Okay. Then.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
See you tomorrow. But I'll give access right after the class. Please download it and get it installed.
Oh,
Okay, sir. Thank you.
okay.